Hello everyone, my name is Sebastian Bratis and I'm a community developer on Assassin's Creed. I want to start off by welcoming you all to the Assassin's Creed Stories livestream. This is the second edition to the series, so if you happen to miss last year's stream, there will be a link in the description to that video. Assassin's Creed Stories is a celebration of all the amazing transmedia projects coming from the world of Assassin's Creed. These projects, ranging from comic books, novels, manga, and podcasts, showcase the love we all have for this franchise and explore both brand new stories and some unexpected additions from the beloved heroes of the Brotherhood. We have a lot of exciting content to talk about, and we'll first start by diving into the world of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I'll be speaking with writers that crafted both the narrative for the Dawn of Ragnarok expansion, as well as the companion comic book published by Dark Horse. Then, I'll have a chance to discuss a historical podcast series, Assassin's Creed Echoes of History, with the co-writer and producer of that project. Finally, we'll be shifting gears to focus on some original upcoming projects, including a webtoon sequel to Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and a discussion about the Magus Conspiracy novel trilogy. We have a lot of exclusive content lined up, so let's jump into it now with Assassin's Creed Forgotten Myths. Assassin's Creed Valhalla Forgotten Myths is a comic miniseries published by Dark Horse Comics that serves as a prequel to Assassin's Creed Valhalla Dawn of Ragnarok. 2 of the 3 issues are already out now in the US and in Canada, with additional translations coming soon. Today, we're joined by some special guests to talk more about the miniseries. Please welcome Alex Freed and Alice Harakis.
Hey Sebastian, hello. Great to be here.
All right, perfect. Wonderful to have both of you. First, I'd like to start by learning a little bit more about who both of you are and what you guys do.
Okay, my name's Alex Harakis. I'm the lead writer at Ubisoft Sofia, and I was responsible for the narrative direction and the overall script writing of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Dawn of Ragnarok.
And I'm Alexander Freed. I'm a novelist, a video game writer, and relevantly today, a comic book writer, and I wrote the script for the Forgotten Myths comic.
It's a pretty lengthy amount of writing. Could you give us a brief overview about what Forgotten Myths is about, Alex, Seth?
Sure. So Forgotten Myths is essentially the story of Balder and Loki. And Balder is the son of Odin, the son of Havi, the most beloved of the gods, the best of the gods, god of light, a courageous warrior, invulnerable to harm. He is seeking a new challenge in his godly life, and he decides he's going to make peace between the fire giants of Muspelheim and the dwarves of Svartalfheim. And in order to do that, he recruits the help of Loki, who is, of course, not particularly beloved by the gods, particularly by Balder's father. So the comics are basically the story of their adventures together, their wary relationship, and of course, because it's based on loosely Norse mythology, it all ends in fire and bloodshed and general horribleness.
Those stories often seem to skew towards the horribleness. So I guess, obviously, because there's so much interconnectivity with Norse mythology, where did the idea for this story originate as it relates to Assassin's Creed Valhalla?
Okay, I mean, the first question, I think, is why mythological? Because Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a very thorough game, and they did such a great job covering the historical side of the Norse culture. So for us, it was really about taking something that, obviously, in Valhalla, there is a mythological aspect, but it's not the main focus of the game. So for us, it was an opportunity to actually jump in there and weave our own story and fill some of the gaps that were understandably there, and really created a great playground, if you like. In terms of the actual why this story, Norse mythology is so broad. I mean, you've got this great creation mythos, you've got so many beloved, sort of well-known stories about the gods and their various antics going on. But we really needed something that would allow us to connect with the base game. And the focus of the base game, when it did look at the mythological side of Norse culture, was to do with Ragnarok. And they showed how Havi, or Odin, began his journey on this road that will eventually lead him to Ragnarok and his ultimate fate. And then they fast forwarded to how it all ends. For us, it was about coming in and looking a bit more with a bit more detail about that journey there. It's kind of like when I do this all the time. When I start reading a book or watching a movie, I'll often read the final chapter to see how it ends, and then I'll go back and it's about finding out how you got there. Most people, I think, know how Ragnarok ends, especially those who played this game. So that's not a huge mystery. The intrigue, what was really interesting was how does this character of Havi, of Odin, actually end up with that fate? How does he embrace his fate, if you like? So that was really the what really appealed to us in this story, and that's really sort of what took our focus, if you like.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, especially there's that sense of inevitability where, as you mentioned, that the conclusion is known, but the intrigue comes into the meandering ways in which we get there. So obviously knowing that in terms of Norse mythology and being able to create stories from Norse mythology, it's rich universe, it's rich characters. Were you both familiar with Norse tales before writing for the game and for the comic, or was this kind of uncharted territory for you both?
For me, I had some knowledge. As a writer of over 20 years, it's one of those things that someone's always coming and asking you, let's do a Vikings project. And so you always run off and do your research, and then you come back and they've changed their mind. They don't do a Vikings project. But it does mean that you do get quite a good knowledge over the years of Norse mythology, of Vikings, etc. So once we decided to do this mythological story, I didn't have sort of like the absolute knowledge by any means, but I did have a good grounding. And then it was really very much a case of me and the rest of the creative team and the rest of the writers just going away and really immersing ourselves for a month or two in Norse mythology, reading, watching things, which is one of the best things about this job. You get paid to do the things you like doing, like researching these fantastic cultures. It was a lot of around the clock getting into the sort of like the culture of the Norse.
Alexander, do you have anything to add on there?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting to hear that story. Mine was a little different. So I've been fairly well steeped in Norse mythology since I was a child, but had never really touched on anything vaguely related to that world in a professional capacity until this comic came along. And for me, it was very much, oh, suddenly I'm playing with these toys that have, well over 1,000 years of history. They have all of this sort of emotional power and historical strength and archetypal weight attached to them. And it was just tremendously exciting to be working with that. To write something in a script like Thor throws his hammer, or Loki shape changes into a fish, and it almost made it difficult to remember. Wait, this needs to work as a story on its own terms as well. I can't just lean entirely on the fact that these icons have built up this power over so many centuries, that they still need to work as characters. They still need to have recognizable emotions and go through something that works even divorced from the mythological background.
Yeah, it must be a certain element of having to find a way to deconstruct all the things that that people know about these characters. Like how do you compartmentalize all of that? It's really interesting how the blurred lines between the comic, the cover, the experience in production, and obviously the game. Assassin's Creed is known for its beloved narrative elements, the experiences it offers through its games and through various transmedia projects. In your opinion, how do comics offer a different storytelling opportunity? And do you see comic books as being a natural extension for the franchise or a natural extension to gaming?
I mean, I've always felt like an author should be playing to the strengths of the medium that they're working in, telling stories that really only that medium can do. And games have so much to offer in that regard. Obviously, interactivity is a beast that no other medium can even really touch upon. It's so powerful. It is utterly unique. And any game that leans into that really just is doing well by its own nature. A comic is never going to be able to outdo a video game on that front. It's never going to be able to outdo a video game on the sort of visceral nature of the action. But what a comic can do is it can layer in text the way a novel can. It can have just sort of, subtleties of dialogue and narration that are very hard to do in other media, and do it alongside a sort of, imaginative set of phantasmagorical imagery. In a comic, we can go from world to world and monster to monster all within the space of a page, when it would have taken a video game or a film, months or years of work to create that many environments. And so we have sort of a limitless budget in a comics world, and all of that pairs up very nicely with the ambitions of the Assassin's Creed universe.
I'll quickly extend that question to you, Alex, but I do have to say, phantasmagorical is probably the coolest word I have ever heard in my entire life up until this point, and it's absolutely something I'm going to take with me and keep in my back pocket. I do want to say it's always cool seeing how these stories can take new shapes across different mediums, as you said, kind of fill in the gaps within each other. Thank you both so much for sharing all of your insights on the project. You can pick up Assassin's Creed Valhalla's Forgotten Myths at your local comic book shop or online retailer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian.
And now I'd like to welcome Clément Lessaf from French-American podcast studio Paradiso. Clément was a co-writer and producer on Echoes of History Ragnarok, the history documentary podcast about Norse mythology, which was launched a few weeks ago in English, French, German, Chinese, and Brazilian Portuguese on all streaming platforms.
Hi, Sebastian. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for your time. Clément, are you able to share a bit about yourself and your role in the development of the podcast, and a bit more about the studio Paradiso as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, Paradiso is a French and American podcast studio, you said it. The main team is based here in Paris, but we have also a small unit in Los Angeles, and we produce different types of podcasts: journalism, investigations, documentaries, kids' stories too, and of course, brand content such as the ones we produce for Ubisoft. I personally joined Paradiso last December to work on different podcasts, including what would become later Ragnarok. On this specific project, I was co-writer and producer, which means that during the writing process, I oversaw the work of our writer, Julie Goisé, and I wrote myself some parts of the episodes, especially the text of Gylfi, who is the character that introduces and ends each episode. And after that, I managed the recording sessions and the post-production with my co-producer on the project, Axel Gobert.
Amazing. So I guess before diving into this project, I want to quickly ask, how familiar were you with Norse mythology as a whole? And did your experience working on this project give you a new appreciation for it?
Well, I had a big advantage here because I'm a huge fan of Norse mythology because, I'm not gonna lie, Marvel movies. My first contact with this mythology was with the movie Thor. I was, I think, 16 when it came out in theater, and I just fell in love with the world. Of course, it helped me a lot getting into the production of the podcast. I already had some solid basis on the topic, but I kind of did more because I read the Edda, which is the main source of the Norse mythology. It's a small book written in the 13th century. So I read it, and I had like the official version back in the days of what was Norse mythology.
So yeah, as you said, in terms of like experiencing the content through movies and through other kind of pop culture, as well as through the actual texts. How do you think that podcasts as a content form work so well with these types of stories?
Well, simply because it relies on the power of the voice. We are used to think that documentary equals TV or cinema, aka images. But actually, 90% of the time, what makes a good documentary is not the images, it's the story you're gonna tell. If your story is strong enough, then you don't need images. It's like a good book. You don't have images in a book, like not since we are kids actually, and it's just the power of imagination that does all the job, and it does it even better than a screen. So that was the starting point of our reflection on Ragnarok. We wanted something that would make the listeners dive in the story, in the Norse mythology, from the beginning to the last minute. And Julie, who wrote the text, did an amazing job for that. She perfectly balanced the historical accuracy and a novel-like narration, if you will. And from the beginning, we were on a good track, I think. I was really confident that we would have this immersion that we were looking for, and we pushed it further in the recording phase, where we asked the host, the different hosts for each language, kind of to put us in a cocoon with their voice. So we would live the story of these gods through their voice, and it kind of feels like they're telling us the story, like, you know, around a campfire at night, and you're just listening and you're absorbed by the words. You're pulled into the story. And the last but not least part of this project was mixing and editing, and in the podcast world, that's probably the most important part. And here our team did an incredible job using the music of the game of Dawn of Ragnarok to put the podcast, the text in music, the words in music, and also adding sound design. So sometimes you're gonna have a wolf wandering around, and you're gonna have like the sound of his paws on the ground, the sound of his roar, and that's just something. You have the sound of Thor, of its hammer, for example, when he's fighting giants. All of this concourse to create the ambience, the atmosphere that we were looking for an audio documentary.
But obviously, Ragnarok seems to be a concept that a lot of people have at least a rudimentary understanding of. Why do you think that is, or why people find Ragnarok specifically to be interesting?
Yeah, sure. Again, pop culture did a huge deal in our knowledge about this word. Most people know the word now, but they don't necessarily know what's behind it. And there are common misconceptions. Of course, people like associate it with the end of the world, which it is actually, and it's kind of the same concept as the Judgment Day in the Bible. It's the same. There are interconnections between these two visions of the end of the world, and it's really influenced by Christianity. Actually, it's not very Nordic to say, like the flames of hell burning the earth. That's in the Bible. That's the Apocalypse, and it was written like 8 centuries before the Vikings conquered England. So of course there was some influence of Christianity over the conception of Ragnarok. So actually, when we look into Ragnarok, we look into the Christian culture, the Christian text, the Bible, and that's something people don't necessarily know.
Yeah, absolutely. And hearing all the passion that you've had for this project, I think the next logical question is, can we expect more Assassin's Creed related history podcasts to come in the future?
Yeah, sure. I can't say too much now about the content, but we will meet your expectations. Yeah. I can guarantee that. We are already developing new podcasts for Ubisoft. But yeah, there will be more Assassin's Creed related podcasts with narrative stories. You're going to know more about history, some facts that you didn't know. You're going to maybe cross the way of some characters, historical figures you might have seen in the games if you are a passionate gamer. So yeah, there's very exciting content on the way. So yeah, stay tuned and keep listening to the Ubisoft's podcast.
I appreciate the expert teasing that you were weaving in and out for. One of the most exciting things for me about Assassin's Creed is this intersection, this interconnection between history and mythology and pop culture. So thank you so much for your time, Clement, for talking with us about this podcast. And if you'd like to listen to all 5 episodes of the Echoes of History podcast, be sure to check them out on your favorite streaming platform.
You want to know more about the Norse gods? A word of warning, you will not be disappointed. I used to be like you. I only knew the superstitions. I worshipped the strength of Thor and Odin and feared Loki's mischief. Who am I? My good friends, my name is Gylfi, King of Sweden. Not the Sweden of today, no. A Sweden from times long past. Like you, one day I decided I wanted to know more about these famous gods who watch us from the sky. So I went to get them myself. I met 3 of them. Their names, High, just as High, and Third. And here's what they told me.
Assassin's Creed Black Flag is easily one of my favorite Assassin's Creed games, so I'm incredibly excited to get into our next topic. Eastern Shores await Edwin Kedway in the official sequel webtoon to Assassin's Creed Black Flag. I'm joined by Etienne Bouvier, Transmedia Content Manager for Ubisoft.
Hey Sebastian, nice to be here today.
Thank you so much for joining us. Can you take a moment to quickly tell us a bit about who you are and your role in the project?
Of course. So I think I'm no stranger for people who watched last year's live stream, as I was already talking about our transmedia initiatives. Basically, I'm the one helping our beautiful partners, our beautiful artists, our beautiful writers deliver on good content on the Assassin's Creed franchise. I help coordinate with the production teams, making sure that everything is consistent, and mostly making sure that everything is at the level of quality that we expect on our transmedia projects.
All right, that's amazing. Thank you. So we should probably start with the obvious question. And can you speak about what a webtoon is and where people are able to enjoy them?
Of course, because that's quite a new format, right? But new means exciting, and that's why we were so eager to explore that format. So Webtoon started in Korea a few years ago. It is basically an illustrated format, and very often the artistic direction is close somehow to manga. And so it's a digital illustrated format that you can read by scrolling through your phone on an app. So it's really a vertical format that was designed at first for people to read when they commute to their job, you know. So it started in Korea, and now it expands worldwide. You can find webtoon content everywhere in the world. You can read it on dedicated apps, and of course that's where you will find our own Assassin's Creed webtoon.
That's really cool, being able to take Assassin's Creed anywhere on your phone. To your point earlier about Edward being a really well-loved character, so obviously he's a fan favorite due to his charisma and his wit. How do you think the webtoon has been able to capture the spirit of that classic character in a new way?
So Edward, he's that cocky character, very funny. I think he really embodies the free spirit that is, the legacy of the Assassin's Brotherhood. So it was really nice to work with such a character because he brings lots of color to the narrative you develop around him. Also, Edward, he embodies adventure, discovery, and with that project, we really wanted to have those thematic pillars at the core of the story. So you see, Edward allows us to have a very character-driven narrative that conveys that sense of adventure. He's always eager also to discover uncharted territories, and since we knew that we wanted to set that story in a completely different area, in a completely new area, Southeast Asia, we were convinced that Edward would be the perfect character to support that story. What's interesting is that the story is set later in his life, so he's a bit older. He is, I'd say, a seasoned character now, and it will be interesting to see how the Edward we knew in Black Flag evolved into that seasoned pirate who still has that taste for adventure and a good fight, of course.
I have one final question that kind of alludes to something you had mentioned earlier when you were teasing. Are you able to share how long the webtoon will be? Like, how long can we expect to sail with Edward again?
So that's something I didn't explain at the beginning, but webtoon, it's a serialized format. It really works like a TV show. So you have a weekly episode launching every week for a long period of time. We plan for the first season to have 40 to 50 episodes. So that's roughly one entire year of content. And that's only the first season, but we really want to have several seasons, probably 3 at least. So if you start reading that story, you know that you're sailing for 3 years, probably, along that storyline and with that character.
Yeah, I guess that's a lot more robust than I was expecting. That is obviously going to be an amazing opportunity to relive this story and to jump back in over the course of the next several years. So I think I speak for a lot of Assassin's Creed fans when I say thank you, Etienne. Being able to sail with Edward once again is going to be super exciting. So keep your eyes peeled. Edward will be back on all Webtoon platforms this summer. I'm really eager to speak with our next guest about her experience adapting the Assassin's Creed universe into novels. Kate Hartfield is with us today to discuss The Magus Conspiracy, the first novel in a brand new original trilogy called The Engine of History. These books will be published by Aconite Books, which will be launched this summer in English and shortly after in many other languages.
Very happy to be here.
Yes, thank you so much. Kate, can you share a bit about yourself and your past work for those who may be unfamiliar? I heard you were recently a Sunday Times best-selling writer from the Embroidered Book.
I was, yeah, that was quite the surprise. Yeah, so the Embroidered Book is my most recent novel. It's about Marie Antoinette and her sister Charlotte, but they're magicians. That's the twist. So that came out in February in the UK and elsewhere, and is just about to come out in North America. I've also written a few other books with historical settings and a couple of interactive fiction projects for Choice of Games. So I usually do work in historical settings, and this is my first time writing anything for Assassin's Creed.
That's amazing. So it seems like kind of like a natural evolution, like the next step in this history genre for you. So obviously, as this is the first time writing for Assassin's Creed for this novel, so obviously the time period is incredibly multifaceted. What made 19th century Europe the backdrop for this particular story? Although I suspect that I might know the reasoning behind that.
Yeah, one of the things I think that appealed to us about this period is the rise of assassinations, of political assassinations in the 19th century. So, you know, Queen Victoria had 8 attempts on her life, all of which she survived. Several monarchs were not so lucky. So it was, you know, there were a lot of political turmoil going on in this century, and a lot of assassination, and, you know, power was crumbling in a lot of ways. We had the revolutions in 1848 that swept across Europe, and even though they didn't succeed in all of their aims, everything seemed to be changing and the old structures were falling down. So it seemed like a natural century to explore a little bit more what was going on with the Assassins and Templars during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously the nature of the history obviously brings into question the historical figures of the time. I know Ada Lovelace is a big component of the novel. How present would you say she is, and how meaningful are her contributions to mathematics play in the overall narrative?
Yeah, so Ada Lovelace we know today mostly as sort of the foremother of the modern computer. You know, she was one of the very central figures in the idea of the invention of the computer, and sort of foresaw it in a way with her work with Charles Babbage. But she died very young. She died at the age of 36 in 1851. And my book covers a longer period after that. So she's not around for the entire book, but she's a presence in it. And one thing that I found really interesting about her is because she died so young, and she had already done this incredibly formative work. And she had all kinds of other things on the go and all kinds of other projects, just had an amazing brain. And a lot of her papers were destroyed after she died because she was as scandalous as her father, Lord Byron. So many things were kind of swept under the rug. So there was a lot of scope there to imagine what else she might have been working on and what else she might have done had she lived. So I explore that a little bit in the book.
To your point earlier, you mentioned them being built as very compelling characters. What do you think are the elements that make a compelling Assassin's Creed story?
I do think character is really key to all of the Assassin's Creed stories. There's so much scope to explore complex personalities because assassins are, by their nature, complex. I mean, that's the entire foundation of the creed, is that, nothing is as simplistic as it might appear. Paradox is built right in, so we have the ingredients for interesting characters with internal conflict right there. So I do think that every character that we see in Assassin's Creed is really the foundation of the story, and the two main characters in this book, Simeon and Pierrette, are both complex and have a lot going on and a lot of choices to make. And so I think that's what I found interesting about their story. The other thing that I really love about any Assassin's Creed story, obviously, as you can tell from my background, is that I do love history, and I love being able to work within known history and ask questions about what might have been. And in a novel, you can't really recreate that incredible sense when you play an Assassin's Creed game and you're up on the rooftops and you think, I am actually in Paris. You can't create that sense of immersion, but you can have a different kind of immersion. And so I tried to kind of echo that sense of being there in prose as much as I could.
Amazing. Well, I want to say thank you so much for your time and for your energy, Kate. Novels are able to weave such rich narrative worlds, and I'm thrilled to be able to jump into the story you've created, and a story that you'll be able to pick up in your local bookstores or online retailers very soon.
Thanks so much.
Well, friends, that's it for today. We're working on a bunch of amazing projects, and I hope that something you saw today has sparked excitement for you to go in and explore Assassin's Creed in a different way. I'd like to say a final big thank you to all of our guests. The excitement and insights you've been able to provide us have been incredibly interesting to hear, and I also want to say a final big thank you to all of you. These projects are an embodiment of the passion that you have for this franchise, and we will continue to expand our worlds together while also revisiting some iconic characters from the franchise. So don't forget to keep your eyes out for the anniversary celebrations taking place for Assassin's Creed 15th year anniversary. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all soon.